that the apocalyptic language around the struggles of climate change and what we're facing paradoxically has the opposite effect, where companies and the consumers might say, well, what's the point? I mean, it's just, it's too late.
Yes. The language, the world's going to end in 10 years, let's calm down. It is not going to end in 10 years here. And in fact, I like to say, the Earth's going to be fine. Let's not worry about the Earth. The question is, what is human life on Earth is going to be like? I am optimistic that more advanced economies like the US will be able to weather some of the transitions we'll have to do even in a 2-degree world. Like you mentioned, sea level rise and how they'll affect some of our major cities. I imagine we'll have to abandon some, but we'll protect others with seawalls and the like. What I get most worried about is the potential social and political disruptions that could occur via climate change. Disruptions of people leading to mass migration, destabilizing governments. It might sound fanciful to some, but some have argued that was in part what generated the Arab Spring, especially in Syria, was droughts that led to lower wheat yields, that led to higher grain prices, that led to then revolution, led to disruption, and then you suddenly see migration throughout Europe. And we're going to the darker part of the discussion here, but these are the things that I worry about when I look forward, toward to the world. Those might be down, a few decades from now. So we might have some time before those real negative impacts really start to become evident. The challenge, and I think why the immediacy is so important, is again, if we think about the stock and flow that I was talking about there, every minute counts basically here. Mm-hmm. And even the 2050 goal is presumed on the idea that we would be reducing emissions basically starting today, moving forward. There's a real risk that in the next 5 years, we'll see significant growth in emissions, in which the 2050 date will now be 2040, let's say, or even 2035. And that's why this next decade is really absolutely critical. We haven't discussed the fact that, population continues to grow in the world. That's going to increase demand for things like food and agriculture. That's going to lead to increased emissions, at least in our current world. So I think while the impacts of climate change are probably, while we're experiencing some today, the major impacts aren't going to be for a few decades. The timing to address them is now. And to the point about, throwing up our hands and saying, it's impossible, we're not going to be able to do this. Again, I'm not a climate scientist, but I take the climate science seriously. And the world is not necessarily linearly impacted by like 2 degrees to 3 degrees to 4 degrees. There's potential for nonlinear impacts as you go up to these higher degrees of warming. And, some of the pictures that are painted by the climate scientists are fairly scary. So, I think as much as we will have to adapt to climate change, we also have to mitigate. And I don't see any other way around this unless we really I don't think we want to accept a world in which we are going to have the significance of warming that the scientists have suggested.